afternoon and Assalamu alaikum. Have you ever pondered over the fact that the most lethal diseases affecting a human being become symptomatic at a stage when they are irreversible? Diabetes, hepatitis, AIDS, etc. However, there is one more disease that is globally underestimated, and that is periodontitis. I was presenting a topic on periodontitis and diabetes, and during the question and answer session, I was questioned by one of the persons sitting in the audience that is there any possible link between periodontitis and cardiac problems? I couldn't answer the question perfectly, but this statement hit my mind. Since that day till now, I looked up into every article published in the last 10 to 12 years and did my research, and I'm right here presenting in front of you with my conclusion. According to a study, half of the person is suffering from periodontitis. 30 to 50% of the population of US is suffering from periodontitis, whereas 10% has severe forms. Such cardiovascular diseases in UAE, around 28% of people are suffering from it. And it was published in the newspaper that stroke ranked second only to heart disease in UAE as the biggest cause of death. In the next 10 years, it was postulated that more than 500,000 of people will suffer from stroke, and the incidence of stroke will increase with every passing day because the aging population is increasing. These are my objectives. Before proceeding with the topic, let us understand what is periodontitis. Periodontitis is basically inflammation of any of the structures included in the periodontium: gingiva, alveolar bone, cementum, periodontal ligament. It is characterized by bone loss, gingival bleeding, halitosis, and pocket formation. Various cardiac problems may affect a human being, but the ones we are concerned are unstable angina and myocardial infarction. What is atherosclerosis? Atherosclerosis is basically accumulation of atherosclerotic plaque in the arteries supplying blood to the heart that may lead to a cardiac arrest and may cause mortality. It is measured by increased thickness of intima media thickness and is greatly associated with cardiovascular disease. So where did it all start? Matilda and his colleagues were the first ones to demonstrate a link between periodontitis and cardiac problems. Later on, many articles were published. An article in JADA was published that said that periodontal disease is a major risk factor for cardiovascular disease, and they cautioned the physician to get ready. Then later on, Tonipi in 2004 came up with the conclusion that periodontal bacteria was associated with increased thickness of intima media thickness. Then in 2009, Tonipi again came up with the conclusion that people suffering from severe generalized periodontitis have increased carotid intima media thickness. 2008, periodontal pathogens. The periodontal bacteria was isolated from erythematous plaque. That was the biggest research that was done. In 2009, again, Tonipi came up with the conclusion that periodontal pathogens can invade the gingival sulcus and can be present in the systemic circulation and affect various organs in the body, including the heart. You may think that there are more than 400 species of bacteria present in the mouth. Is every bacteria responsible for periodontitis? Absolutely not. There are these anaerobic bacteria, such as Actinobacillus actinomycetum comitans and Porphyrinoma gingivalis, that release alginine-specific cysteine proteins that disrupt the immune system and lead to subsequent connective tissue background and cause periodontitis. These are some other bacteria. Now, before establishing a link between periodontitis, let us first understand how is periodontitis caused. We all know it is caused by bacteria, but how? Bacteria in the plaque release toxins that causes the release of cytokines, interleukins, prostaglandins, and it's said that cytokines are very important for healing, but in excess, they cause inflammation and severe damage. The other theory says that there is an immune response to the bacteria, and white blood cells are being released that produce enzymes, MMPs, matrix metalloproteinases, that break down the connective tissues. This is how periodontitis is caused. What was my criteria for searching for different articles? I went through 3 different articles and a few other small journals with these terms, and randomized controlled trials, longitudinal studies, case cohort control studies were included in the study. Almost 50 abstracts were being reviewed by 2 different me and my colleagues so that the bias has been reduced and the common findings were tabulated. These were the common findings. These all had a positive correlation. A positive correlation between periodontitis and cardiac problems. We also found articles which had negative correlation, but the number was very few. But still, we included it in our research. What was the summary, the common findings? Patients with periodontitis had a 25% increased risk of coronary heart disease relative to those without it. Another study in 1996 was done that said, for every increase in 20% bone loss, 40% there was 40% increase in cardiovascular disease. The risk was increased. As I said, in 2004, periodontitis was labeled as an independent risk factor for stroke. The same year, by the same author, another study was done that said that porphyroma gingivalis related to chronic periodontitis is capable of invading the coronary and carotid epithelium in the cell structures. Another study concluded there was presence of periodontal bacteria in carotid adenomas such as Actinomyces actinomycetium comitans, bacteria bursitis, porphyroma gingivalis, and Ebadullah intermedia. Another study was done in 2004 that said that periodontal bacteria was associated with increased thickness of the intima media thickness. In 2009, this was something I personally liked a lot, that plasma fatty acids were higher in patients suffering from periodontitis, and plasma fatty acids are important cardiovascular biomarkers. In 2009, Monteiro, he came up with the conclusion that patients suffering from periodontitis were having low level of HDL, and we all know that HDL is responsible for cholesterol metabolism transporting it to the peripheral tissues. And it was also found out that periodontitis leads to lipid dysregulation and increased expression of cytokine inflammation. While going through these articles finding the possible link, we came up with a problem. The problem was aryl hydrocarbons, for example, are present in cigarette smoking. Aryl hydrocarbons were capable of causing periodontitis and breaking down the periodontal connective tissue. The same aryl hydrocarbons also promoted vascular disease. They share common risk factors. Matrix metalloproteinases, on the other hand, in 2 different studies, we found out that they were very important in periodontal tissue background and also destabilizing aromas and leading to cardiovascular problems. So we came up with a problem because they shared common risk factors. We thought for a while, is it because of the common risk factors that these 2 things are interrelated, or is there a true link between periodontitis and cardiac problems? So Beckett in 2006, he adjusted all the risk factors and he found out that yes, there is a true link between periodontal bacteria and cardiac problems. You may wonder that there is presence of periodontal bacteria, the bacteria is present in systemic circulation, but what is the pathophysiology? How does it affect the heart from the oral cavity? The bacteria, they release endotoxic polysaccharides that causes the release of human necrosis factors, interleukins, prostaglandins, and cytokines. And these lipopolysaccharides and other bacterial components, they activate an impressive cascade of inflammatory cytokines that play a role in atherosclerotic heart disease by two mechanisms. One is by direct action on the vessel wall, and the another one is by inducing the liver to produce acute phase proteins such as CRP. So the bacteria travels to the heart, affects it directly by direct action, and by indirect action, they induce the liver to produce acute phase proteins such as CRP, fibrinogen that affect the coagulation, platelet activation, and lead to atheroma formation. The same lipopolysaccharide and inflammatory cytokine increases the expression of nucleoside addition molecules such as ICAM and VCAM, and we all have studied in our physiology. ICAM and VCAM are associated with atheroma formation. Recent studies prove that periodontal disease is associated with cardiovascular risk factors, including acute phase proteins such as CRP and fibrinogen. And these CRP and fibrinogen contribute to atheroma formation, while several mechanisms such as CRP trigger complement activation and fibrinogen clotting factors through the direct action by the bacteria. This is a very good diagram that explains the direct effect on the heart and an indirect effect to the liver on the heart, leading to atheroma formation and ultimately causing cardiovascular problems. So this was all. We came to a conclusion that yes, that there is a link between periodontal bacteria and cardiac problems. But is this preventable? Of course it is. Everything is preventable. Frequent brushing, maybe flossing, use of mouthwash, just an simple oral hygiene method can prevent a person from suffering from periodontitis. Visiting the dentist as soon as possible when pain is diagnosed, when the gums bleed, and dental checkup twice or once a year. But for example, if a patient comes to you and he's already suffering from periodontitis, then what is the possible treatment to be delivered to him so that the risk factors for cardiovascular disease is also reduced and the periodontal condition is also improved? We also went through different articles that explain the different treatment approaches the patient being affected by periodontal bacteria and having increased levels of CRPs and acute phase proteins in their blood. We came to a conclusion that standard therapy and intensive therapy, it was successful in reducing the CRPs levels in the blood and also improving the periodontal condition of the patient. The treatment should be, I want to make clear that the treatment should be delivered based on the pocket depth. If the pocket depth is normal, simple oral hygiene methods can be administered. But if the pocket depth is more, then we may go up to and use guided tissue and bone regeneration. We may also use antibiotics and NSAIDs to control the inflammatory responses in the healing of a patient. The study which I was talking about, and I just mentioned, that standard therapy, intensive therapy, reduced the LDL cholesterol, CRP, and also improved the periodontal condition of the patient. Turnitin in 2007 determined that if the patient has significant oral health, standard oral health, there is an improvement in endothelial function. So what is my conclusion? My conclusion for today is that every patient suffering from periodontitis should be informed about possible risk factors affecting different organs of the body, be it liver, be it heart, cardiac problems, etc. Because there is a link between periodontitis and cardiac problems. And if a patient does not take care of his oral health, his general health will be compromised over a period of time. And I've already mentioned these researches before, that when you improve the condition, the periodontal condition, even the cardiac condition is also improved. There is a very common notion that we tell to the small kids that eating one apple a day keeps the doctor away. I would say brushing frequency in the day keeps the doctor away. Thank you for your time.